What's going on, everyone? Mad Chad 412 here, back on YouTube. Today we are going to take a look at Penguins naming Todd Reirden and Mike Volucci as assistant coaches. Recently, they fired three assistant coaches: Mark Recchi, Sergei Gonchar, and Jacques Martin. And they recently today came out and announced they're bringing back Todd Reirden. For those of you who don't know, Todd Reirden was actually an assistant coach for the Penguins before he went off to Washington, was an assistant there, then took over for Barry Trotz for the defending champion Capitals. They recently let him go after losing to the Islanders, so the Penguins are bringing back Todd Reirden and also promoted Mike Volucci, who was coaching down in Wilkes-Barre, which is their AHL affiliate. I like both these moves. I didn't agree with getting rid of Gonchar or Jacques Martin. I kind of feel like they were kind of made the fall guys for Jim Rutherford's ineptitude of signing Justin Schultz and Jack Johnson to long-term contracts. That said, Todd Reirden, the one thing that I have faith in is Reirden is going to be a big upgrade over Mark Recchi when it comes to coaching the power play. And Reirden also did have some success working with NHL defensemen. So I do think that John Marino will continue to progress well. I think that Chris Letang had some of his best seasons when Todd Reirden was here. So I really like that dynamic. And Mike Volucci is a guy that has really won everywhere. He's coached a ton of prominent players. JT Miller, who is from Pittsburgh and is a great player. James Neal. Volucci has actually won at every level that he's coached at. In 2018, 2019, he actually won the Calder Cup in the AHL for Charlotte, and then also he's won the whole thing in juniors as well. He's also very highly touted when it comes to developing players. Again, James Neal was a player that he was a part of his development as well in juniors. I actually do think Mike Volucci is probably in their long-term plans as far as being a potential replacement for Mike Sullivan. I hope that Reirden would not be considered down the line. I think Reirden is one of those guys that, he's like one of those coordinators in football where they're a great defensive, offensive coordinator, and then teams keep giving these guys chances to be head coaches. Some guys are made to be head coaches. Some guys are just made to be great assistants. I think Todd Reirden's a great assistant. I don't really think he's a good coach. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters to me because Mike Sullivan, yes, he won 2 Stanley Cups. We cannot take that away. I think Mike Sullivan also could have easily been considered a Jack Adams winner this year, considering that his team won 40 games despite the fact they were missing Malkin and Crosby and Letang for, I think all three of them missed over 10 games this year. Yeah, they did. And Crosby missed over 20 games. And the Penguins were sailing right away. The problem is he's 1-7 in his last 8 playoff games. He's lost 3 consecutive playoff series. They've won 1 playoff game in the last 2 years. And when you have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, that's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. And the one thing that I've experienced as a hockey fan and someone that has written and talked about hockey almost my entire life, hockey coaches have very short shelf lives, perhaps the shortest of any coach or any position in the sports world. It's a grueling sport. It's hard to continue to find new ways to motivate guys. And as we've seen with Bausma taking over and then winning the cup and then fizzling out, and Sullivan taking over and winning the cup, the same thing could happen. Hell, the Capitals moved on from Barry Trotz, and I think Barry Trotz is one of the few coaches that is actually truly better coach than Mike Sullivan. And they moved on. Because it's just the nature of the beast. Vegas fired their head coach Gallant, who was the Jack Adams Award winner, and I thought that was terrible. But look, they might win the cup this year. They're a juggernaut. I think hockey coaches are probably one of the most replaceable positions in all of sports. It's you're not going to trade Crosby, you're not going to trade Malkin, so you're not going to get rid of these guys. So when the team needs to go in a new direction, it's going to be easier to replace Sullivan. So despite the fact, look at his record, look how impressive it is. Despite this, and listen, if they fired Mike Sullivan or if they moved on, they probably wouldn't fire him. They'd probably ask him to step down, but they might have to remove him. But if they did, he'd probably find a coaching job the next day, and that's fine. and he might even find success as well. But I think we also need to realize that, hey, just because he won 2 cups with this core group of players doesn't mean that nobody else can. I hate the narrative of who else you're going to get, because I just showed you that Mike Vellucci is probably a candidate down the line to do that. Now you have him as an assistant. Now he's going to get to know these players. And if Mike Sullivan, if this Penguins team is off to a rocky start, or if they fizzle out and lose in the first round next year, I do think that should be an option. I also think that the Penguins need to move on from general manager Jim Rutherford as well. But I will let you know, they're probably going to be more loyal to Rutherford than they are Sullivan. There's no doubt about that. So trust me, if this team fails, if they don't go to at least the second round of the conference finals next year, if they have another similar result or don't even make the playoffs or have a bad stretch, I do think Sullivan is going to be the fall guy. And honestly, his coaching has left a lot to be desired. I talked about this in my blog post the other day, but deployment has been a major issue with Mike Sullivan, where here I'll show you what I'm talking about here, but his deployment, his player usage has really left a lot to be desired when it comes to this. This is from Ineffective Math on Twitter, at Ineffective Math. Make sure you give him a follow. But he talks about the Penguins' player usage. And look at this, Brian Rust. This is your leading goal scorer, probably your second best winger after Jake Guentzel, and Jason Zucker, your second or third best winger after Jake Guentzel. And these guys, look at their usage. Look at their usage. You're using guys. Look at Patrick Marleau's getting better deployment and better matchups than these two guys. Why is that? Why was Brian Rust tied to the bench when he leads your team in power play goals and goals on both the power play and with when you needed a goal down 1 minute to go? You put Justin Schultz on the ice instead of John Marino, who was your best defenseman all year, and Brian Rust, your leading goal scorer. To me, when you have that is something that Mike Sullivan, there's very few things that coaches have control of. Choosing when and where to put guys on the ice is exactly what he's paid to do. And absolutely, his player usage had a big impact on them losing to Montreal. So again, I'm a Mike Sullivan fan. I appreciate the back-to-back cups. It's something that is going to age like fine wine, and no one will ever take that away. He's always welcome in Pittsburgh. But if this team, if he continues to not make adjustments, not learn from his mistakes, I absolutely think that the Penguins need to look to move on from Mike Sullivan unless he next season has to be better than this year. And they have to go past the first round of the playoffs. If not, then I would look. But I think I would look to move him. But I do think that this transaction today of getting Reardon and Vellucci absolutely shows me that these are guys they would probably consider. And I do think that Sullivan's seat is getting a little warm up. If you like the video, drop a like. Make sure you subscribe. I'm trying to build this channel up big time. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, MadChad412. I'll see y'all out there.